Hey everybody, it's Jack Reedy with Future Pastimes, and we are reading Dune. So let's read. This next chapter starts with an excerpt from Family Commentaries by Princess Irulan, where she talks about Muad'Dib's father, Duke Leto, and that he was devoted to his men, and everybody respected him, and basically that, the son is an extension of the father, and so tying those qualities between Paul and the Duke. So in this chapter, we meet Duke Leto for the first time, and we get the sense that he is a well-respected Duke. We learn this not only from the way that he commands the fierce loyalty of his men, maybe not Dr. Yueh so much, although Dr. Yueh would love to be a member of House Atreides, but also in the Landsraad, we learned, that the other houses really look up to Duke Leto, which puts him in a precarious position because the Emperor is very jealous and very suspicious. And they talk about this whole appointment of Duke Leto going to Arrakis, and, the fiefdom being taken from Harkonnen, who are sort of their chief rivals, and how that is a move that's really is supposed to set them up to come to blows at some point. And Paul is like, if, this looks like a trap, and if it is a trap, why are we doing this? But the Duke is like, the fact that we know that it's a trap hopefully gives us an advantage in how to deal with it. And they also talk about, look, we know that this move by the Emperor means the Emperor is not on our side. He is definitely against us. But he explains how they can't just call him out, and because the other houses won't necessarily be able to back him, and the Emperor can just deny it, and it'll just create chaos. Another part of their conversation is talking about how the Emperor commands these Sardaukar, his terror troops, and the Duke believes that the reason that they're such fierce fighters is that they're trained on Seleucus Secundus, which is kind of a hellscape. And no one's been able to verify that, but he believes that that's the case. And they talk about, we know another planet that is also kind of a hellscape, and it's Arrakis. And so Paul and the Duke are like, yeah, maybe that's the Fremen are probably just as fierce warriors, and it could be the secret army that the Duke needs to win over to his side in order to stand up to the Emperor. And so he explains that he has sent Duncan Idaho ahead to try to get in touch with the Fremen because he thinks that Duncan represents the best of House Atreides. He's a fierce warrior, he's loyal, he is honest and direct, and so he's hoping that the Fremen will meet him and judge all of Atreides by Duncan Idaho and win them over. And they talk about how the Harkonnen never thought about this because they just looked down on the Fremen. They thought that they were, the scum in the desert, and they tried to hunt them for sport. He thinks everybody's underestimating how many Fremen there are. It could be a lot of Fremen, and if the warriors are as fierce as they think, then they will never have to fear the Emperor or anyone else if they can win them as allies. So this is the Duke's plan. And he's decided that Paul is at the point where he needs to be treated like an adult, brought in on some of these plans, told the truth. He's not going to sugarcoat it anymore. And he recognizes that Paul's wheels within his wheels are turning and is able to piece things together. And it ends with the Duke saying, look, every one of your teachers and mentors agrees that you are a good candidate to become a mentat. And he explains that we've actually been training you to become a mentat basically your whole life. But at this point, you need to be involved in that decision and formalize the training if that's something that you want to do. Eventually, you're going to be the Duke, and a Duke who is also a mentat is very formidable. And again, the mentats are the human computers. They don't really use computers anymore because it's a society that eschews technology, especially thinking machines. It's illegal. So, and they don't trust it because they learned this the hard way. So Paul is like, yeah, all right, that's pretty cool. Sure, let me continue to train as a mentat, and so because he can sense how proud the Duke is of him, which makes him feel good as well. And so they clearly have a really good relationship. Paul, good relationship with his mother, with his father. Certainly in our society, that's not always the case, and it's probably not the case in Dune's society either. So I think it's one of the things that illustrates what makes the Atreides family special. They are clearly protagonist material, but they're probably getting set up for some hard moments in their lives coming up pretty soon. So that's the big takeaway here. Frank Herbert is setting the stage for, again, the massive fall of a very charismatic leader, and how does the rest of the family deal with that fallout? So I think that's where we're going with this, and that's the kind of the point of this chapter. We want to meet the Duke. We want to understand what kind of a person he is, and I think we get a pretty good sense. I think Herbert does a good job of this. He also explains a couple other things from the Imperium. One of the reasons that they think it is a great idea to take this fiefdom, even though they didn't really have a lot of choice because the Emperor commanded it, but they're going to get a CHOAM directorship. And so Leto explains what CHOAM is a little bit by rattling off what the acronym is, the Combine Honnet Ober Advancer Mercantiles. He doesn't really explain what all that means, but he talks about how CHOAM is integral to every corner of the economy. So it's a big deal, and getting this directorship is going to be really important. It's going to elevate House Atreides. And that and running the spice operations on Arrakis means that they're going to have an income like they've never had before. House Atreides is not a rich house. Caladan is not a rich planet. Their chief export is rice, which I'm sure in an Imperium this big, everybody is eating rice, but it's not a luxury item, and so they're not getting rich off of selling their pundi rice. So it is important for them to take advantage of this. It's an offer that they really can't refuse, which the Emperor knows, and is counting on them to get lulled into a false sense of security, perhaps. And they talk about who's stockpiling the spice, and it's certainly the Harkonnens, and that's why the Harkonnens are going to want to make sure that the spice production is not smooth on Arrakis. They're going to expect sabotage, and they're going to expect trouble from the Harkonnens all along the way. So they're prepared for it. So clearly the Duke has been thinking about the pros and cons of this whole thing and how they can turn it into an advantage, what sorts of trouble they can expect once they get going. So they've been thinking about this. Have they thought of everything? Time will tell. So that's really all that goes on in this chapter. It's an interesting chapter. Again, Frank Herbert is building out the environment that this is taking place, the setting of the universe of Dune, as well as setting up Arrakis before we actually get there and experience it. They've been a lot of doom talk about just how rough it is going to be there on the planet, and but they have no idea it's going to get a lot more rough than that. So let me know your thoughts on this chapter if you're reading along, and what you think of it. And if you have questions so far about or not understanding what has been going on, fire those away. We'll get into it as much as we can. That's it for this one. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you again soon.